Hi everyone, I'm making this video to talk a little bit about the QRI. I have the QRI 5 here. I've lent my QRI 6 to a student. I can lend someone this one would be fine. Hopefully what we go over tonight will give you enough information so you can do the assignment. So the QRI is one of the best informal reading inventory that's out there, and one of the reasons I like it is you don't have to give it all. You can make some very informed choices about what you would do with it. So basically there are a few options for the QRI, and they should be found under either chapter 7 or 8, but one of the pages will say assessment options, and these are for the passages. The word lists are another option. I would prefer that you do give at least one of the word lists. So there's a whole thing on preparation for testing, and then there'll be, in this case it was chapter 6, administration and scoring of the word list. I want you to look at the word list and the passages. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about the word list. The way that the QRI is organized is that there are word lists that are they're graded. So they're approximate grades where you can decide if you think your student at that grade level needs to go lower or higher. And the word lists are not nonsense words. They are words in real words. So what has to happen with the word list? With all of the QRI, this is the manual. You have all the material available to you, but you don't have copies for the student. So you have to make copies of whatever you think you might use. And one of the tricks with the QRI is you always want to be a little higher and a little lower because you're not 100% sure. The QRI is a great test to give to new students, to students with disabilities who've had instruction at some level, but you're not really 100% sure what their level's going to be. So as you see, there's graded word lists here. You might want to print more than one of them. And for example, with this one, print this on 3 different papers with only one showing one time, one showing the other time. You have to decide how you're going to give it to the student. And then you also have to make copies of the scoring sheets. So let me just find it. This is what you don't want to be doing when you give the test. So that's why you want to make sure you have all the materials ahead of time. But I'm using the book, so I don't have the materials. Okay, here we go. So you want to Xerox also the examiner sheets. And look at me, I can't tell from where the camera is. So you want to Xerox the examiner sheets for the same word list that you think you're going to give the student. Now, one thing that some people like to do is what's called a tachistoscope. And they'll take an index card or a piece of paper and cut. Of course, this isn't very good because I'm just doing it to show you. But they'll cut a slit, something like this, in the paper so that when the student is going down the word list, they only see one word at a time. You can do that with an index card, you can do it with a piece of paper, or you can decide that the student just wants to follow along with their finger. You can maybe have them do the sheet just like this to go down. You can decide. In real life, you would do this with a student that you know. In this case, you might have to do it with an adult who's acting like a student with a learning disability. My objective in this assignment is that you get to know the QRI because it's something that's very, very useful, not only for IEPs, not only for CSEs, but a lot of times for students that will come to you, you have all these scores and numbers, but you really don't know what they really can do or not. So word lists you should definitely do. And there are two tricky things on the word list that you have to distinguish between. One is if it's identified automatically. And part of that is for automaticity. We know now that the slower kids are with sounding out words, the more it impacts their comprehension. So identified automatically, I believe, is within, I'll have to look at how many seconds it is. So you're either going to put a check on that line or you're going to put a check on the line that says identified, but without the automaticity. So let me look at chapter 6 and see where that is. So you administer the list. You can stop anytime there's frustration if you want. There's no basal and ceiling in this like there is in other things, in other tests. And so words automaticity are 1 second. So in your head, you're doing 1 second, check automaticity, not once longer than 1 second, you check the other column. And then all of you have probably taken literacy courses before, and you have your own way to keep track phonetically of what the student said. I'm going to give you some practice assignments to see how you do with scoring. They'll be up tonight for you to practice that phonetic spelling of incorrect words. So for example, if the word was apple and the student said apple, you would put A-P-P-E-L and then the long A sound, the line over the A to indicate the long A sound. Something like that. You can have your own as long as you can make some sense out of it. So that's the word list, and you want to make sure that there is a scoring section at the bottom, but you don't have to use it. What I like about the QRI is you don't ever have to score any of the QRI. Just by watching this student interact with the material, you're going to learn a lot about what they can and can't do, what skills they try to use that maybe they can't, and things like that. So so then what's going to happen is you're going to look at the passage comprehensions. The first ones have some pictures, and as you get to the more advanced ones, even though they're still at a lower level, there are no pictures. You're going to have to Xerox those two, and you're also going to have to Xerox the examiner sheets for these. And so what I'd like you to do is look at the examiner sheets, and you have a couple of things you can do. You don't have to do all of them. Again, if you look at the reflection, one of the things that I want you to talk about is what you decided to include and what you did not decide to include. So the first thing is the concept questions. This is on the story about jumping. I think it's called I Can Jump. It's a pre-primer story. So you say to the student, what does it mean to jump? And you record their answer. What does it mean to hop? What does it mean to sleep? What does it mean to dream? Each of those would get a 3, 2, 1, or 0. In the examiner's manual, it kind of gives you some ideas about what it would be. But a lot of this is professional judgment. Did the student explain dream at a 3, a 2, a 1, or a 0? And part of this is to gauge their prior knowledge and see if they don't understand the questions, is it because they really don't understand the concepts? They didn't know them before the story started, so they have no context with which to put the story. You can score them. Again, you don't have to store them. And then you can say predicting them. In fact, this story is not called I Can Jump. I Can. It's what it's called. So you say to them, the name of this story is I Can. What do you think it's going to be about? And this is that predictive quality that a lot of our kids with disabilities don't have. They don't even think about the title as it might give them clues to what the story is about, so it doesn't help them with comprehension when in fact it could. So that's another part. And then the student reads the story. You keep track of the words very much like you do in a running record. If you don't know what a running record is, I have something that's going to be on the website tonight to give you some insight into that. But most of you that have had any kind of reading courses will understand that you keep track of omissions, insertions, substitutions, that kind of thing. There are 37 words. You can score them. It'll tell you how much it means for an independent level, an instructional level, frustration level. There's a rate you can do. There's correct words per minute. But again, you don't have to do that. Just by hearing the student read the story out loud, you'll be able to get a sense of it. You can score it or not. The other thing you can do is you can have the student listen while you read a story to them. Many of our students are awesome in terms of their ears. They stink in terms of their reading, but they're great in terms of their auditory processing skills. Not everybody. So you might choose a story at a higher reading level and read it to the student and then ask them the questions to see if they have better listening comprehension than they do reading comprehension. So you can do that. There's a retelling scoring. You can say to the student, tell me the story back as much as you remember from the beginning to the end. And you can keep score with that too. Many of our students will remember the beginning and remember the end, but they'll lose the middle. That's a big gap. Not all of them, but again, this is additional insight into how the students interact. And then there are comprehension questions. So in this case, it says, what can the girl at the beginning of the story do? And it tells you in the examiner copy that you would have whether or not it's explicit or it's an inference or it harks back to another knowledge that was said in an early part of the story. So you want the student to say jump, you write, there's space for you to write the student's answer. And you're going to decide correct or incorrect. I mean, it might be close, but this is not the 3, 2, 1, 0. This is right or wrong. What can another girl in the story do? If the student says, play hopscotch, but the answer was really hop, it tells you, you can count it, it's more implicit, that kind of a thing. So there are 5 questions, and you can count the number correct, the number incorrect. So there's a lot of options with this. There is also a think aloud that happens at the higher levels, and that's explained very, very clearly as to where the students stop and sort of say, this is where I realize that I have to think about this. That's possible. What I love about this, the QRI, is they also have middle school, higher level elementary, middle school, and high school level stories, and they have expository as well as narrative. We have a lot of kids that are great with a narrative story because that's all they've ever read in reading class. But give them a science book or a social studies book and they're lost, because a lot of times these passages have so much information chunked into one paragraph or one sentence that they get lost. So you might want to decide that I have a 3rd grade, someone who's going to act at a 3rd grade level or 5th grade level. I'm going to let them read the story, and then I'm also going to let them read the biography or the social studies or whatever it is at that. So we have things at like the plant structure for survival. We have the busy beaver. And a lot of these are the kind of reading that they would encounter in social studies or science class. So I think that's everything. I really want you to get the sense of how you make sense out of this manual, but also what decisions you made, why you made them, what you might do next time, because this is a test that would really help you write the PLEPs on the IEP. The student can do this, the student can't do this, struggles with this, takes more time, those kinds of statements do not come to you from standardized reading tests like the Woodcock or some of the other ones. Whereas a test like this really gets into the nitty-gritty of what's going on in that kid's head when I'm asking them to read and recall, to decode words. So that's why I have you do the QRI. I think the best thing you could do is look at the reflection ahead of time and see the kinds. It's not going to ask you any scores. It's going to ask you to explain your thinking and what you might do in the future to make good use of this test. I really love this test as a special educator, and I hope you will too. Please let me know if you have any questions. Bye.